This is our algebra skills review for chapter 5, and the topic this time is writing linear equations. So hopefully that y equals mx plus b brings back fond memories. It says a linear equation is an equation whose graph is a straight line. Linear equations are useful in science, business, and many other areas. For example, the linear equation f equals 32 plus 9/5 c gives the rule for converting a temperature from degrees Celsius to degrees Fahrenheit. The numbers 32 and 9/5 determine the graph of the equation. The y-coordinate at which a graph crosses the y-axis is called the y-intercept. The measure of steepness is called the slope. Below are the graphs of 4 equations. The table gives the equation, the slope, and the y-intercept for each graph. How do the numbers in each equation relate to the slope and the y-intercept? Okay, we'll start with this first one. So I have y equals 2 plus 3x. So if I'm looking at y equals mx plus b, if I would rewrite that one, it would be y equals 3x plus 2. So the y-intercept is 2, so I go to 2 on the line here, and the slope is 3 over 1. So I go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1. So this would be the blue line. The next one here, y equals 2x minus 1. The y-intercept is a negative 1. And the slope is 2 over 1. So I go up 2 and over 1. And that's going to get me back 1, 2 over 1. It's going to get me back on this line. And so that is that orangey color, orange or red. Y equals negative 3x plus 4 has a y-intercept of 4. And the slope is negative 3 over 1. So you go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1. So that gives me this orange one. So I'm going to call this orange. I'm going to go back and change that to red. Okay, and the last one, if I rewrite it, it is 3 halves x minus 5. So the y-intercept is a negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the slope is up 3 and over 2. So this would be the green line. So this is now a conjecture, and the conjecture falls on your conjecture list after conjecture number 52. It's called equation of a line. The equation of a straight line is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And then I have an example, 2 examples actually. So this red one has a y-intercept of 2, and then it goes up 1 and over 2. So that's the red equation. And then the blue one has a y-intercept of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the slope is negative 1 over 1. So I go down 1 over 1. So that would be the blue line. Here is example A. Find the equation of line AB from its graph. So the equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept. So this graph crosses the y-axis at a negative 2. And the slope of it is up 3 over 4. So to get from one point to another point, from A to B, I have to go up 3 and then over 4. Positive 3, positive 4. So there's their solution. Given points, C at 4, 6, D at negative 2, 3, find the equation of line CD. So first, they calculated the slope. So the slope is the subtraction of the y's over the subtraction of the x's. So if this is x and y, this is also an x and a y. If I call this one the first point, so those are sub 1s, and I call this the second point, those would be sub 2s. So when I subtract y sub 2 minus y sub 1, it would be 3 minus 6. When I subtract x sub 2 minus x sub 1, it would be negative 2 minus 4. So I'd have negative 3 over negative 6, which is equal to 1/2. So that is my slope. So that is my m. So I substitute the slope into the slope-intercept form of a line, y equals mx plus b. So my m now is a 1/2. And this says use either of the given points. They decided to use 4, 6 probably because there's no negative sign on those. And this is an x, and this is a y then on my line. So I put in an x here now of 4 and a y here of 6. So now the only thing that I'm missing, now that I have the 1/2 in for m, is this b. So if I solve for that, 6 equals half of 4, which is 2. And then subtract 2 from both sides, b would be equal to 4. So the equation of this line is, again, y equals mx plus b, and we found out the m is a 1/2, and we just found out that the b is 4. And now for the grand finale. Find the equation of the perpendicular bisector of the segment with endpoints, with endpoints 2, 9, and -4, -3. So this is the line that I want to find the perpendicular bisector to. So this is the line then that I want to actually find the equation of. So I have steps written down. The first step is find the slope of the given segment. So the given segment has endpoints -4, -3, and 2, 9. So I'm going to use the slope formula. Slope is going to be a -3 minus 9 when I subtract the y's, and on the bottom I'm going to subtract the x's, -4 minus 2. So I get -12 over -6, which is 2 over 1, or 2. Then I find the slope of the perpendicular bisector. It's going to be the opposite reciprocal slope, because two lines that are perpendicular have opposite reciprocal slopes. So that's why I left this as 2 over 1. Because now to find the slope of the perpendicular bisector, I'm going to flip those, take the reciprocal of them to be 1/2, and I'm going to change the sign from a positive to a negative. So the slope of my perpendicular bisector, my m of the perpendicular bisector, is a -1/2. Next, the perpendicular bisector goes through the midpoint of the given segment, right here. So I'm going to find that midpoint using the midpoint formula. To do that, I'm going to add up the x's of my given segment, so 2 and a -4, and divide them by 2, and add up my y's, 9 and a -3, and divide that by 2. So I get that the midpoint is a -1, 3. So my perpendicular bisector goes through that midpoint. So that is an x and a y on my perpendicular bisector. And this is the m of my perpendicular bisector. So step 4 now says substitute those m of a -1/2, x of a -1, and y of a 3 into y equals mx plus b to find out what b is. So there I am substituting them in, and then -1/2 times the -1 is a +1/2, and then subtract 1/2 from both sides. I have b is equal to 2.5. So now, back here, I knew the m, and now I just found out the b, so now I'm ready to write my answer. Y equals mx plus b, m of a -1/2, x plus b, which is 2.5. So we just did the perpendicular bisector equation. For homework, you're going to have to do some problems that have to do with finding a median and finding an altitude. So I have a guide that I have typed out for you, and I have either given it to you or it is posted on the ICMH site. So I will show you where that is. So here's my CMH. I go to Files, and originally the files will say probably Class Folder, but this is Chapter 5, so I go to Chapter 5. And then it says Writing Equations of Perpendicular Bisectors, Medians, and Altitudes right here. So if I click on that and open it, here are the steps to find the equation of a perpendicular bisector. to find the equation of a median, and to find the equation of an altitude. So these should be helpful guides to you as you work on your homework. Now I'm going to get out of there.